Hello, I hope you're doing well. Welcome to the second Patreon video for the month of March. In this video, as I'd mentioned, I am going to be talking about my Grandma Betty. And it just so happens that the sun is lower in the sky because it is late afternoon and it's extremely sunny, which is kind of typical. Grandma Betty was a very sunny, wonderful, bright person. So it's kind of fitting that the sun has come out as I'm filming this. So I wanted to talk about some more information about my Grandma Betty. Wanted to give you a bit of history about her. I also wanted to explain why she is such an inspiration even now. She passed away in 1990, unfortunately too young, and due to skin cancer. She had a skin cancer that was very aggressive, so we lost her in 1990, unfortunately. But the month of March, and I'm not trying to bring this down. I want this to be a happy talk. The month of March is her birthday month. She was born on March 24th, 1909 in Scotland. And she was born as Elizabeth Stevenson, and then eventually down the road she moved to Canada, as well as my Grandpa Duncan also moved to Canada. Duncan Smart. My last name is Smart, S-M-A-R-T. And they didn't meet when they were in Scotland. They actually met when they were in Canada. And they got married, and then they proceeded to have 14 children. Yes, 14. They got married May 4th, 1929. So together they saw a lot. They were at the end of the 20s, the flapper era, and as they got married a few months later, the Great Depression started with the big crash in October. The stock crash of October 1929. Sorry, I get a little emotional when I talk about my grandma, and you'll find out why. Yeah, and then they had 14 children together. My dad was in the middle, and yeah, unfortunately, she passed away in 1990, which was a huge loss to not only her family but her community. She was somebody who was always there for you, whether you were a family member, a friend, or even a stranger. It didn't matter. If she heard you were in need, she was there for you. Even, when my grandparents were first married, Great Depression was happening. They were living in poverty, and it didn't matter. If they had just enough food on the table for them, if they found out somebody needed a meal, they figured out how to give them a meal. My grandma also was somebody who, if there was a bake sale, she was like, oh my gosh, she was an incredible baker. So just to cover that too, but if there was a bake sale, she had food for it, baked goods. Every type of family event that we all got together for, Grandma baked. Her most coveted dishes were her butter tarts, her currant cake, her Christmas pudding, which was soaked in rum for many, many months, and her shortbreads. Her shortbreads were literally melt in your mouth to die for. And my dad, on his birthday, would always request a raisin pie that my grandma would make for him. I'm not a fan of raisins, and but he was, and yeah, every birthday she would make sure he had a raisin pie. So she had a large amount of grandchildren. I can't even tell you how many. Honestly, I can't even tell you. It's a lot. And she remembered everyone's birthday. There could have been like 100 grandchildren. It did not matter. She remembered every single birthday. And she made sure that you had a card and usually money in it. Um, Depending, she would buy you a gift if she was able to, but definitely 100% you would get money in your card. And then you could go and buy whatever it is you wanted. And I mean, this is a woman who probably, sorry, I just have to look down at my notes here, just make sure I'm not losing track here. But she was a woman who couldn't afford to be putting money in birthday cards. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if she was sending out a birthday card every other day to either her children or her grandchildren or her great grandchildren, like, or her friends' kids. Like, yeah. And, if there was a funeral, if somebody in your family passed away, she was there with food. If there was a celebration, and you needed something made, she was there. She knit gifts. Like, she was knitting like I do. I've picked that habit up from her. If you're sitting, you're knitting. She was always knitting and always had a huge pile of knitted gifts to give to people. And again, it wasn't just family members, it was other people too. And my mom's parents' farmhouse burnt down at one point. Like, they lost their house and everything in it, and my grandma was first in line to help them out. That's she would always be the first in line. You would always know there's Betty Smart. You could always depend on Betty Smart. You didn't even have to ask. She was just there. It was like she just knew. And when she passed away, it was a huge loss to her community and her family. And so some of the things, again, I'm just getting all verklempt when I talk about her, but I can't help it. This woman was a force. She also, she found humor in, it can be the most dire, worst situation that anybody has ever been in, and she found humor in it, and she found a way to get you to see that humor. It didn't matter. Like, this is a woman who went through poverty, lost her husband when he was in his early 50s, lost one of her daughters when she was only 50, had seen, unfortunately, back then occasionally, babies would be passed away in stillbirth, and she in her entire life has been through a lot. But yet she was like the most kind, generous woman you would ever meet, and had the most incredible laugh. A lot of people comment on my husband's laugh. It is very loud and very boisterous. So is my grandma Betty's. Like, you could hear her a couple blocks away. Like, and she lit up every single room she walked into. And a lot of her people would use the word jolly for her. It was more than that. Her whole personality was bigger than that. She was just an amazing woman. However, you did not cross her or her family, because if you tried to hurt or cross her family, she was a super protective lion. She would make sure that you knew you didn't mess around with her or her family. You didn't. She wasn't one of these people that held grudges. She wasn't one of these people like, don't get on my bad side. It wasn't like that at all. It was like, she'd set you straight very quickly. Very quickly. I rarely saw that woman get mad, but when she got mad, she had a very thick Scottish accent, even though she lived in Canada for quite a while. She never, everyone loses their accent a bit, but she still had a pretty strong one. But I gotta tell you, when she got mad, that accent got extra thick, and you knew you were in trouble. So you walked away. I'm just looking down at my notes because, like, as I said, I get a little overwhelmed when I talk about her, because she is somebody who I think about every single day of my life. I've thought about her. And when I've been in like rough situations myself, I can actually smell her perfume. She loved Chantilly lace. She wore it all the time. She had on the back of her toilet, Chantilly lace used to have, I'm gonna say in the 60s or 70s maybe, a round powder puff with like, it wasn't like for your face, it was like body powder. She had that on the back of her toilet, as well as there was a perfume doll. I don't know if anyone remembers these, but there was a perfume doll that Chantilly lace came in as well. So yeah, her bathroom smelled of Chantilly lace. She smelled of Chantilly lace. When you would hug that woman, you would walk away smelling like Chantilly lace. So yeah, if I'm ever like going down a hole into depression, or I'm just, things are going really horribly, I will get a whiff of that, and it is her telling you to smarten up, and it's kicking you in the ass. So, um, yeah, she also like inspired me in a whole bunch of other ways. She taught me how to knit. That was a big one for me. My mom did originally try to teach me and got impatient with me, I guess is a good word. I was having a hard time learning how to do it. Like it took me forever to learn how to cast on. But again, I was also 10 years old, and I went to my grandma and she's knitting, and I was telling her I want to learn how to knit. Mom tried to teach me, but I couldn't learn it. So she literally sat me down across the table from her and gave me yarn and probably like a 4 millimeter knitting needle, and was like, do what I do. Just, imitate what I'm doing. But for the first little while, I actually knit backwards because I was mirroring what she was doing. And then she taught me how to correct myself. So I was knitting the normal way, or if that's, let's call it normal. But because of her, I did learn how to knit. And then the one thing that always took me forever was to learn how to cast on, but I got past that eventually. But yeah, and I've talked about this in another video, she gave me a whole bunch of scrap yarn and taught me to just knit using the knit stitch, knit this very long scarf until I got my tension right, and she would like rip it out, make me start again, rip it out, make me start it again. And that is how I learned to knit, and that was because of Grandma Betty. There had been other situations in my teen years. I went through hell. A lot of people wouldn't recognize it back then. I had a hard time asking for help, and I had been bullied by 3 specific girls. It was emotional and mental abuse from them. At the time when I was growing up in the 70s, uh, if you're getting bullied, the schools did nothing about it, like nothing. And it was unfortunate because I know a lot of kids who went through public school and high school when I did. Especially, it was really hard for me in high school with these girls. Bullying was just like brushed off, and teachers, parents, other people just thought you were being over dramatic, or it was hormonal, or all of these things, right? So when I was saying this is what's happening to me, all that got brushed off, except for my grandma. My grandma was somebody I would go to if I needed to talk to somebody, if I just needed a hug or any of that stuff. And there was one time where I was kind of at the peak of my ability to handle the abuse that was being thrown at me by these girls. And again, something I was hiding, other than, I did try to explain to people, can you please help me? This is happening. And when I got brushed off, I just kept it inside. I started to swallow up the pain I was going through. And one day I was at the peak of it. It was like I couldn't deal with it anymore. I'm on my way home from school. I'm crying, which I rarely did, and didn't know she was behind me. And she's beside me. And she's like, "What's going on? Why are you crying?" And I'm like, I start to explain to her. And this was not her ignoring me. This was not her brushing off the problem. She listened to what I had to say and then looked at me and said, "Why do you care what they think?" And then I started explaining again because I thought she was asking me a question. And again, she was like, "Why do you care what they think?" And the third time around, it was like, "Oh, I get it now. I understand now. You're telling me that they're the problem. I'm not the problem. And I need to, like, maybe not care about them anymore." Which is not a solution to ending bullying, but her talking to me about this and her giving me advice and her listening to me actually gave me the strength to confront them. And I did confront them. And when I did, they left me alone. I didn't have to deal with them anymore because I just needed that one person, and it was her. And that was Grandma. She would do anything for her family, anything. So, sorry, that's a bit of a maybe TMI, but I just wanted to sort of explain to you how amazing this woman was and how much she influenced me in my life. I became a stronger person because of her. I learned how to handle stress and situations better because of her. I learned how to pull myself out of depression because of her. She was such an incredible woman. Sorry, but I just wanted you to understand who Grandma Betty was, who Betty Smart was, why I talk about her so much, and why I dedicated this month to her and that knitting pattern, which was her knitting pattern anyways. Whether she got it from another knitting book at some point, who knows? It was a handwritten pattern of hers, and it's why I wanted to have that pattern as a Patreon pattern. It's why I wanted to talk to you about who Grandma Betty was. And, I did start another pattern that I created on my own that is also dedicated to her. So at some point down the road, later in the year when it's knitting time again for people, I might actually finish that design and have it as a Patreon. So one of the other things I just wanted to briefly chat about, and I can see the sun is washing me out on one side. I apologize. Oh well. It's nice and warm. My Aunt Margie, in 2012, caught wind that I wanted to take Grandma's recipes and put them into a book. I still haven't done it. I am going to, though. And she had all of Grandma's original recipes, and she scanned them all in for me into this book, into this duotang, inserted a whole bunch of pictures, like she did, scanned in a bunch of pictures of Grandma. I'm going to be popping these pictures up during the talk as well. And she did a little write-up at the back, and then there is a history of Grandma Betty at the beginning. And I was given her, this was one of her original notebooks that she wrote her recipes in. So Aunt Margie gave me one of these. But it has every single recipe that she either copied from a cookbook or was handed down to her or she created on her own. And this is her famous currant cake. And what I'm going to be doing is, as a bonus for the month, is I'm going to be giving you a couple of recipes out of this book. I will give you the actual copy of the photocopy, but I'm also going to give you a like I'll type it out so you can read it better. It isn't going to be the currant cake, I'm going to tell you that right now, because I think if I shared that recipe, people might be upset with me because that was her specialty. But there is a few other recipes in here that, like her chili con carne, it was amazing. So I'll probably share that one. But I'm also going to share one of her baking recipes. I can't find it right now. There is maybe it's at the beginning again. I'm not going to just continually flip through here to find it while I'm talking to you, but there was another, oh yeah, Impossible Pumpkin Pie might be the one that I might share, and the marmalade maybe. So yeah, I might share those. Anyway, but yeah, so that was I just wanted to, again, get into a little bit about who Grandma Betty was, and why this is her month. This is her birthday month, and she deserves to be talked about. She deserves to have a video about her, dedicated to her, and hopefully some of my family sees this as well, because it will only be on Patreon. But yeah, so that is one of the reasons I am the person I am today, is because she gave me a lot of strength and insight and desire to be creative as well. She was also somebody that contributed to me being a creative person. Mom always made sure I had art supplies growing up, like every birthday, Christmas, whatever. There was always art supplies for me, and Grandma Betty would do that as well, or she would make sure there was art supplies at her house. She lived literally right around the corner from us, so I might not have seen her every day, but I saw her close to every day. So sometimes I would go over there to draw or write. She was also an amazing storyteller, so a lot of that is in me. Anyway, I just don't want to go much longer with this video, but I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed the Patreon pattern this month. I would love to see your versions of it. And there will be another Betty pattern coming later in the year. I just have to finish designing that pattern. And yeah, that is my talk for the month. And as I said, recipes are coming. And until next month, have an amazing day, having an amazing rest of the week, and rest of the month. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.